Friends, this is Steve Dupuy for the Bible News Prophecy Program with Dr. Bob Thiel, bringing you news and analysis of world events in light of Bible prophecy. Dr. Thiel, I've been telling some of the downtrodden that are asking me for money that they will have to get a credit card reader because I don't carry any money. Are we getting closer and closer to a cashless society?
Yes, absolutely. And actually, some are warning about various threats associated with governments going cashless. Earlier this week, I saw an article titled "The Threat of Cashless Societies." Then it went over the dangers of cashless societies. There's two primary dangers associated with a cashless society. One is denial of purchasing power, which basically means that somebody can stop you from using it, a bank or a government or whatever. The other, it says, complete loss of anonymity or privacy. The article says, a cashless society is a controlled society. If everything must go through an online banking or credit card process, you've lost virtually all control over what you buy. And anything that's not politically sanctioned could very well be easily vaporized overnight. Then the article says, totalitarians don't accept blame for their own failures. But what we have is a complete loss of anonymity. And once cash is abolished everywhere, your attempts at any form of anonymity will be destroyed, end quote.
Well, that sounds like we will all become part of the downtrodden. Is this dismal view of the future shared by all?
Well, not all in secular sources do so, but even J.P. Morgan actually published something about cashlessness I'd like to read. It said, would a cashless society be a better one? People don't want anyone, including the government, to be able to monitor their transaction data, and the institutions entrusted to guard this data are vulnerable to being hacked. Plus, cash isn't vulnerable to system failures, which could take down digital payment systems. Article says, still, I'd be surprised if we don't have a cashless society in the next 50 years. If that becomes the case, then it's crucial that we ensure that necessary safeguards are in place. There's a growing appetite for a cashless society. If a digital currency organically becomes adopted at scale, driven by a rogue agenda and without due checks and balances in place, that leaves us vulnerable. Let's get ahead of this and do it right. End quote.
That sounds like a mixed bag. J.P. Morgan seems to be telling us they are against a cashless society, but we're going to have one anyway. What does the Bible say, Dr. Thiel? Will we go cashless or not?
Yes, I believe the world, or at least most of Europe, will effectively go cashless within the next decade. According to the Bible, a totalitarian Europe is going to end up with the ability to control and monitor buying and selling. Many, though, are pushing for cashlessness. However, not everyone is. I saw an article a couple of days ago that various ones in the Anglo-American nations have concern about central bank digital currencies, which is a form of digital currency, of course. It says that 90% of New Zealanders believe the government would use it to monitor their citizens, according to their central bank, so they don't like it. The Bank of Canada found that 85% of Canadians said they wouldn't use a digital Canadian dollar. In the United States, only 16% support the idea of using a central bank digital currency. And with Donald Trump assuming office in January, the chance of digital currency would drop significantly. In Australia, they've stated that, quote, there's a clear public interest case. There's a lack of a clear public interest case for establishing a retail central bank digital currency. And the reality is that's right. Going to completely monitorable central bank digital currency or other digital currency is not in the interest of the public.
Well, since it seems like a lot of people around the world are against the cashless society, would that be the death knell for CBDCs?
No, you've got the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. They put out a paper last month promoting central bank digital currencies. I'm going to read some excerpts from their report. The global interest in CBDC remains strong and explorations continue around the world. The European Central Bank is moving forward with its digital euro project. It moved from its initial preparation phase in November 2023. A draft rule book went into effect January 2024. And the next phase involves the actual development and rollout of the digital euro could start in November 2025 at the earliest. And the IMF wants to encourage broad adoption. Then they say the CBDC is a digital force and central bank money may allow for a digital trail. Data to be accessed, collected, processed, and stored. In contrast to cash, again, I'm reading their report, the CBDC could be designed to potentially include a wealth of personal data encapsulating transaction histories, user demographics, and behavioral patterns. Personal data could establish a link between counterparty identities and transactions, end quote.
Well, there's a little bit of good and a whole lot of bad in that report. Is it possible that the will of the people will finally triumph and put an end to CBDCs?
No, not in Europe. Furthermore, you've got the European-based WEF, World Economic Forum, and they're pleased that more and more places are looking to adopt one. They put out a white paper that they say that the intention is to introduce a fully digitized security system that is future-proof for incremental adoption of distributed ledger technology by 2030. Then they say the Bank for International Settlements proposed two models for this. One is to bring CBDCs, digital tokens, and other assets to a common unified ledger. And two, to pursue incremental progress for creating interlinking systems. So basically, now I'm going to read an article about this. It says this unified ledger is another way for a one world digital currency system to be completely centralized under control of global banks like the BIS or the IMF. Said that they're all acknowledging that they want this system without opposition. They want it to be put in incrementally. They want to interlink things. And the BIS predicts there'll be at least 9 major central bank digital currencies in circulation by the year 2030. But the globalists said they want everybody by then. The Cashless Society would be the end game for economic anonymity and freedom in trade, end quote. So yes, you've got groups like the World Economic Forum, IMF, and the European Central Bank. They want all financial transactions to be digital, connected, and monitorable. Yes, a cashless society ends economic, privacy, anonymity, and freedom.
Well, then that seems to be the death knell for the will of the people. Is there anything in the Bible about CBDCs?
Well, not by that name, but I want to go to the book of Revelation, talk about the soon rise up European beast power. Revelation 13, starting in verse 16, I'm going to read from the New King James Version of the Bible. He, the beast power, causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of a beast, for it's the number of a man. His number is 666. Now, this type of surveillance, financial surveillance, could not have possibly happened during the time of the Apostle John, as there was no real way to monitor many financial transactions back then. I mean, you and I could have gone out in the woods and bought and sold. They could never do anything with their currency. Now, there's actually a group of people called preterists who say all this stuff was already fulfilled, but that's nonsense because, again, you couldn't control all buying and selling thousands of years ago. And actually, only till the last 30 or so years was the technology even there that maybe could even make this possible. But furthermore, it does exist now. And as far as what's going on now, it's likely it's going to take supercomputers with artificial intelligence to make this prophecy be fulfilled. Well, last month it was announced, quote, the journey toward Europe's first exascale supercomputer, Jupiter, is progressing at a robust pace. A major milestone is reached with the completion of JEDI, which is its second module. It's built by the Franco-German team. It's supposed to enable breakthroughs in use of artificial intelligence, make scientific simulations discoveries to a new level, and it's part of a European Union project. So the Europeans are working on both AI as well as a supercomputer that can process all kinds of stuff. Now, another thing about Europe is interesting is they're now developing their own CIA. They want the European Union to create a full-fledged intelligence cooperation service at the EU level that can serve both strategic and operational needs. And the EU's president, Ursula von der Leyen, said we should be building on improving the flow of information gathering, and intelligence gathering. In order, they want to be able to monitor it. This is moving towards 666. Now, interestingly, and we reported about this years ago, but on the 1st of June of 2021, something called the European Public Prosecutor's Office officially started operations. And what's it supposed to do? It's supposed to monitor financial transactions. So they've got this agency to do it. They're proposing a new spy agency, so they'll be able to collect more data. They're putting out supercomputers so they can process this data. They want to use AI to make it all happen. So, the reality is Europeans they have the will and the ability to implement 666 type controls. Europe also has claimed it wants to be the dominant force in cryptocurrency, in all type of digital currencies. We're seeing that the knowledge and monitoring of financial transactions is already increasing, but people are pushing for it further. The Europeans are going to push for a central bank digital currency, and actually many within the BRICS nations are also going to push for a CBDC.
Well, it's interesting that Europe feels it will be the dominant force in CBDCs, with the emphasis on dominant. With both the European and BRICS nations pushing for a CBDC, is its implementation right around the corner?
Well, 2025, we're not going to see a cashless world. And if they do actually put out the digital euro in late 2025, that's a small chance. It won't be everywhere yet. Okay, that's why I mentioned that the World Economic Forum talked about this incremental stuff. But what we do expect to see in 2025 is more steps related to pushing for central bank digital currencies and various totalitarian steps to be put in place. Anyway, biblically, we know that the 666 financial controls are going to be put in place in Europe and elsewhere. And by the way, we have a free book people might find of interest. It's available online at ccog.org called Lost Tribes and Prophecies. It talks about what's going to happen to Europe and the rest of the world. And it, amongst other things, it cites a particular prophecy we're talking about here regarding digital control, because that is what your Bible teaches, and that is going to come to pass. And we're seeing right now in the world steps toward that. A lot of people simply aren't paying attention. Things are changing and are not going to remain the way that they have been. Steps toward 666 controls are truly happening. And if you're a biblical skeptic, you should ask yourself, wait a second. The Bible talks about monitoring all buying and selling. It couldn't have happened when John wrote this in the 1st century AD. Well, to do this, well, you might need something like computers. We got those. You might need something like digital currency. We got that. You might need something like artificial intelligence to check everything out to make sure you can control who's buying and selling. We got that. You might need a computer that's actually big enough that could possibly do all that. Well, guess what? They're doing that too. All right. Anyway, irrespective of what happens in the United States, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, and the United Kingdom, Europe is going to adopt some type of digital currency, probably within the next few years. The European 666 is going to arise and can control buying and selling. For a time, Europe is going to master the future under a totalitarian dictator. But the good news is one day it will be replaced by the coming kingdom of God.
Thank you, Dr. Thiel. For more interviews with Dr. Thiel, in addition to written as well as audio articles, visit our website at BibleNewsProphecy.net. This is Steve Dupuy for the Bible News Prophecy Program.